That's right, we're at it again. And the typical disclaimer for this series, the How I Would Make a Fallout Game series that I've been doing, these are not like my typical Fallout video essays. These are unscripted because I feel like it gives a little bit more authenticity to what's going on here. It's not that I think scripted videos are fake or not authentic or any, like, worse or anything, quite the contrary. But I think with this type of video, with the topics that we're covering, it's fun to do it off the top of my head and then, get into the comments and talk about what could be different. And so that's why this video is more loose. You may hear me stutter a bit more. You may hear me retract on what I'm saying or even repeat myself. So that's the typical disclaimer for this. But today, we're looking at how I would make Fallout 76. This was highly requested in the comments of my last video, which was how I would have made Fallout 4. So I wanted to dive into a video talking about what I would have done with Fallout 76, because quite frankly, I think it writes itself, and I think the missteps that Bethesda have taken are completely intentional, because it's really hard to mess this up in my opinion. So we're going to dive into how I would make the spin-off Fallout 76. We are going to be slightly using the same formula that we've been using in the other videos, so make sure to check those out if you haven't, where we are going to be kind of using some of Bethesda's ideas, but this time it's going to be a lot less literal because we're talking a whole different setting with my version of Fallout 76.
I'm pissed off a little bit!
One thing to take off the top right now is the price. What we would do gameplay-wise, price-wise. Now, this is something that we haven't really touched on in the other ones because they're just normal single-player games. You expect to pay just a normal single-player game price for them. Full price for a game or whatever happens. But with Fallout 76, there's a few price options that I'd like to talk about, and one of them allows the Atomic Shop in a way, not the Atomic Shop, but it allows the subscription to stay, and the other one completely does away with all internal monetization of the game. Now, something I do want to bring up, and it's something that people have brought up before when trying to defend Fallout 76 and its monetization, is World of Warcraft and similar MMOs where you pay, full price for the game. I remember when I played WoW back during Wrath of the Lich King, I didn't play it in any serious way. I just played it because my friends were playing it. So I didn't really get fully into it. But when that was going on, I remember, not paying too much for WoW, and then also you had the subscription fee. Now, with our version of Fallout 76 here, either it's going to be free to play with a subscription, or it's going to be full price like it was, with no internal monetizations. The things from the Atom Shop in both versions are going to be gameplay rewards for defeating bosses, going through dungeons, doing challenges, things like that. And the subscription can stay if it's free to play, so that people, you can get into this game for free, here's what you got, but if you pay, you get these extra features, and the subscription features so far wouldn't change because I haven't really thought much into the monetization aspect because it's not my cup of tea, it's not my favorite thing. But that's what we're going to be doing here. Either it's a full price game, or it's free to play, and then that subscription would be allowed. Fallout First would not be involved if it was a full price game, and all of those things that are behind that paywall would just be implemented into the game. There you go. And then also with the way that they're releasing DLCs, if it was a free-to-play game, I think you would charge for those DLCs, almost like expansions for World of Warcraft. And if it was full price, I'm fine with the updates being free. But you gotta understand, that they gotta sell their product, so that makes sense. That's just kind of where I'm going monetization-wise with it, and we're not going to be bringing up the monetization aspects at all for the rest of the time. So those are the rules that we're sticking with.
It's my money, and I need it now!
I do not mind the West Virginia setting. It's not something that bugs me at all. In fact, I quite like it. Some of the strengths of Fallout 76 as it stands as a real game right now, the actual version we have, its strengths are locations that you can find in the game. There's a couple of others as well that we're going to get into later, but locations in the map are not really the biggest problem of Fallout 76, in my opinion anyway. I think the game, on average, looks pretty good when it comes to the locations. I like the way the maps look. I like the different varieties in the biomes. And so, keep in mind that West Virginia isn't my problem. I don't have a problem with that setting, but we are going to be moving the game. It's not going to be taking place in West Virginia, though I am okay with the timeline, like 25 years after the Great War. I'm okay with that, but it's going to be taking place way, way west, and we're going to be locating it a bit north of where the first 2 games in New Vegas take place. So we're going to be looking at Washington, Oregon, and maybe a dip down into California, but barely. Idaho could be in there, as well as Montana, depending on how the map's laid out. But it's Washington and Oregon mainly. And the reason I'm doing that is because, hey, this is my version of the game, and I'm a little biased. But I actually think that there could be a lot of cool opportunities up there. And honestly, the same kind of opportunities that we see in West Virginia when it comes to creatures and things like that. Not a lot of that would change at all, really. But the setting would be different. The reason the setting would be different is because I'd want it to more closely tie in to those first games. I want it to be kind of on the West Coast. And in Washington and Oregon, there is room for a lot of different biomes. You have desert-type areas like you see down in Nevada, and you have giant woods and mountains and stuff like that you can't really find anywhere else besides the Pacific Northwest. So I definitely want to explore that area of the game and bring it more closer to the other titles so that we can tie more of, like, for example, if you want the Brotherhood in the game and you want it to take place in this timeline, putting it in a location like this makes a hell of a lot more sense than saying that Maxon sent a group of people over to West Virginia to send a satellite up rather and recruited everybody, when you can legitimately say a group of Brotherhood people just walked north for a bit and it would actually make sense. So this allows us to have things like the Enclave, things like the Brotherhood, things that you remember from the Fallout games, and also have it make a little bit more sense. Yeah, it'll still feel like shoehorned in, but it won't be as, like quite as ridiculous as what we see in current 76 when it comes to just the factions being out of place, just being wherever they want.
Good point. It must be an oversight.
When it comes to player creation and kind of like how we're introduced to the game, I dig the vault idea. I really do. So what we're going to be doing is there's a vault that is been mentioned, like you can see it on the wiki and stuff like that. There's a vault up in Mount Rainier, and we would use that area as kind of like the player start hub. Now, human isn't going to be the only quote-unquote race that you can play as. We're going to have ghouls as well. We are not going to have a playable race of super mutants, much to the dismay of a lot of people. I've seen a lot of people say, I want to play as a super mutant, I want to do this. But ghouls and humans, that is how we're going to start with this. How you're a ghoul is you just weren't in the vault, and your player would like kind of just start outside the vault as a ghoul. Different kind of set of things going on, different set of like starting quests, and the human players would start in the vault. Doesn't matter whatever lore there was for the vault. I'm not going to sit here and try to rewrite a whole, I mean, look at what they did with 76. It would pretty much be the same thing. Oh, it's time to leave the vault, and we're all going out. We got the all clear signal. Something like that would happen, and then you'd leave the vault. But for ghouls, I mean, there's just like a little camp, and there's some ghouls, and it doesn't, like, you can kind of create your own backstory within the character creation of what kind of ghoul you are, how you became a ghoul, things like that. So I want that to be a situation when it comes to player creation. The reason we're not doing super mutants is because it doesn't fit in well with like how that, like, it doesn't really fit in with the ghoul and the human thing. Like, super mutants are created typically by FEV. In our versions of the Fallout games, we didn't even have super mutants on the East Coast because the master created super mutants and then they roamed around. We haven't even really seen super mutants in the timeline of Fallout yet, so we're going to assume that they just aren't around, really. They could maybe come in a pack later or something like that as kind of like an invasion angle because they start getting created, but we wouldn't see them in the timeline for a little bit because we're still 25 years after the bomb. So that's kind of how I'd look at character creation. I'd like to see, honestly, it'd be hard to like do the leveling system right because you just get OP so fast, but honestly, the way they do leveling with 76 is a bit fair, so we might keep that same kind of system because I'm not smart enough to think of anything better, honestly, for like an online Fallout game. For single player Fallout games, I think New Vegas has the best leveling system. For Online, you know, like 76, it works decently. Some characters and builds are better than others, and there's really not a whole huge way that we can affect that. So we're just gonna stick with kind of how it is now, and move on to what the meat of the game is here.
What a mess. I asked for mid-rare, but it's raw.
First off, human NPCs would be involved. They would just be a little bit on the scarce side. You would see them sporadically, but they would be there and they'd be a part of the actual game. Quest givers, merchants, things like that. But we would see human NPCs. We'd see settlements based around these human NPCs that, had their own lore, had their own things going on, had their own quests going on a lot in the... Now, when it comes to the gameplay aspect, there's something I want to get off too with the human NPCs and stuff like that. Since we're in the Pacific Northwest, the area around Seattle and the northern area of Washington going, and it would dissipate going further south, but it would be pretty much in a permanent nuclear winter. We would see tons of snow, tons of, just like it would be a dramatized version of that. And the further south you go, you get away from that. So you would start in like a snowy environment because you're coming out of the Mount Rainier Vault, or at least a camp next to it if you're a ghoul. So there would be these different types of biomes like that, but permanent nuclear winter up there, and I like that idea. That's something that was also speculated within the documents when Seattle was mentioned to be officially a part of the Fallout series. I believe it was in the canceled MMO that Interplay was working on. If not, it was in Fallout Extreme, another canceled game. One or the other. They talk about they talk about Seattle being in a permanent nuclear winter. So that's something that I'd like to see. Going back to the meat of the game and the actual gameplay part of it, solo players would be able to enjoy a variety of different side quests. And of course there would be a main quest. And honestly, I don't mind the Scorched thing, but I absolutely like the nuke option. Like I'm very torn on it, because in the Fallout setting, everybody's supposed to be afraid of that. They don't want to see it happen again. But in the fun aspect of it, it is really fun to like set off a nuke and go check that out. So I think we would keep that mechanic of the game strictly because of how fun it is. And honestly, a lot of that stuff from 76 would remain, where the Scorched are there and the Scorched Beast Queen. I just think seeing a bigger reward to that on a server-wide option would be better. Like, you kill the Scorched Beast Queen and something on the server like cool happens, like all the things close up and like all the little, the cracks that those guys come out of, the fissure sites, those all close up and there's no more Scorched on the server or something like that until you go to a new server or until the server resets, something like that. But just some kind of reward for it would be nice. Regardless of the main quest, solo players would be able to enjoy going to different settlements, talking to NPCs, getting housing in a settlement that they like, really allowing you to live in this world. Now, if you didn't want to live inside of a settlement or a city, of course you'd have the option to build your camp like we see in Fallout 76. You'd be able to build your camp, set up a shop, all the things that we see. I really enjoy that, and I think the merchant side of 76 that they have been working on is one of the strengths, and I would like to see more of that in our version. So we would see that when it comes to player housing. You would be able to get an apartment or a house, or some kind of shack or something inside of a settlement if you enjoyed it, and maybe even set up a shop there as well. On the flip side of it, if you didn't like city life, you could do that on your own with the camp system. I would like there to be some kind of control mechanic. Now this could be per server, however you want to have it work, and we could even brainstorm ideas about contested control areas. But factions, and this probably wouldn't be for solo players, though I'm sure they could attempt it if they were a one-person faction. Solo players, factions, up to 5 people, would, have their faction name and maybe even a little logo that they could create, something like that. And they would be able to take towns, vaults, things like that, control them, and earn resources from that. I think that's a really cool mechanic, and I've seen it before in F Online servers, and it's really awesome, and it actually adds a lot of the replay value that you see in these games. For PvP and situations like that, there would be full loot drop in the same way that we kind of see it in 76. You would drop a paper bag with everything. Okay, so everything that you... Alright. everything in your inventory for the most part. Now, there would be some safe spots, like I think that maybe just what you're wearing would be suffice. So if a full loot drop is too aggressive for some people out there, I would be willing to say anything you have equipped would be dropped, and the player would be able to loot it. And in 76 we see that happen with the junk, but I'm talking like all the armor that you're wearing, the gun that you have in your hand, the ammo for that gun, some of your health items as well. I'd like to see that happen, because then it adds risk and reward to doing things like a big control zone battle, or even just basic PvP. PvP would work how, for some reason, by the way, and I see nobody talking about this, and if they did, forgive me for not checking it out, but the survival mode on Fallout 76 is just gone. But our version of Fallout 76 would work a lot like survival mode. Open PvP, and there would be safe areas. There absolutely would be safe areas, but if these zones would consist of major cities. The reason they would be safe is because if somebody shot at you, the guards of that town would destroy them. They'd wreck them. So that's what makes you safe, being inside those walls. You leave an area like that, you're fair game. So you better protect yourself, or at least be ready for that. And I think that adds a lot more of the Fallout, quote unquote Fallout style, to an online game. To maybe you do come across a band of player raiders that are looking to rob you. And that's something that you would have to deal with on a server, and I honestly enjoy that. And then you also have the fear of losing whatever you have equipped. And so it really makes PvP battles, or even walking to another town, a bit more like, oh, I gotta plan this out, I gotta check this out, I gotta make sure that I do not get wrecked on my way there because I have this. So I like that aspect of the game. I like it to be a little bit more aggressive when it comes to that, because it makes me feel like there's an actual risk and reward system. Overall, I think an online Fallout honestly writes itself. I think the players and the environment do a much better job at forming the story than a writer could. Like them going in and just seeing people interact in a post-apocalyptic playground that's online with other people. It can write its own stories. It can create its own factions. It can do really cool things, and the types of things that And I dislike a lot of Fallout 76. But there's one feature in particular that makes me have a little bit of hope for it, and that's the cryptids. Would we see more of this in our version? Absolutely, because they're phenomenal. Now you may be saying, well, all those cryptids are localized to West Virginia, but that's not entirely true. We get stories of Mothman and things like that over here, but we also have our own mythical beings that live out here, like Bigfoot. You could have a Bigfoot situation. All kinds of different things that you could do with cryptid type animals that I would love to see expanded more in this version of 76 and in the real version of 76. Not only that, but like just in general, the Fallout story can really tell itself on an online platform. And I think that Bethesda really tried too hard to monetize every aspect of it and to make it appeal to the most people possible, that it ended up appealing to very few. And so regardless of what my hypothetical thoughts on what a version of 76 I'd like to see or I would make is, Fallout 76 is a huge missed opportunity. It really is. And though I have had a little bit of fun in it. I've played it a lot. I am like level 130 or something like that. I've put time into it, and I've checked out all the things that it has to offer. There's some things that are really strong and really good, and then there's some things that make you done with the game. You could be having a great time on a side quest that makes you pick up all this stuff and set it up on a board and put all these clues together, in an actual like scavenger hunt for things, like quest where you're going around and piecing together real clues of something. And then, you'll get to a culmination where you fight a bunch of enemies and half of them are invincible because they're bugged out and the game is all glitchy and the textures aren't loading, and you fucking, crash to the screen and it tells you to buy a bunch of shit on the atomic shop. And that's where it really starts to leave a bad taste in your mouth. And it's a huge missed opportunity because, again, like I said, it can write itself. But we are going to end it here. And those are just some of my thoughts on how I would make 76 and how I think it could be improved just by, a few of those changes. Of course, the decision's up to you. What do you guys think? Tell me in the comments, just like in the Fallout 3 video and in the Fallout 4 video. That's the whole point that I'm making these, is to have a conversation in the comments about what you guys think would make a good Fallout 76. I kind of looked at it as what would make a good online Fallout game, but you know, use that as a template if you need to. I'd love to hear your ideas. I love checking them all out. You guys are the fucking best. Also, you know who else is the fucking best? My patrons and YouTube channel members. These guys support the channel super directly, and it is amazing the amount of support and the type of support that I get from you guys. It helps out the channel so much, and I'm really grateful. And I'm especially grateful to my biggest followers and supporters. We have Kim Jong-un, Popo Hum, Your Typical Redneck, Fireflare, Corbin King, James Starkey, and Primark Mustard. These guys support the channel the most. Like, they have the largest piece of the pie up there, and it's just ridiculous. You guys are the best. I love ya, and thank you for listening to me ramble about Fallout 76. So, if you want to be in that list of people, check out the links in the description below. Also, make sure to like or dislike, depending on what you thought of my opinion here. I'll see you in the comments. It has been Mantis.
I gotta testify. Come up in the spot looking extra fly. For the day you die, you gon' touch the sky. You gon' touch the sky, baby girl. Testify. Come up in the spot looking extra fly. For the day you die, you gon' touch